First of all, good afternoon, everyone. First thing I would like to do, if you don't mind, I'd like to thank all the emails and cards and flowers and that people sent in the passing of my mom, which was, I've been out of commission for about 5 weeks, but I just want to thank you. It was really heartfelt. So for that, any new attendees out there? Oh, what do you have there? Was it Rebecca?
I see a Rebecca raising her hand.
Yeah, it's Rebecca. Hey, Rebecca, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Hey, there's no old saying, copacetic.
There you go.
Yes, welcome. Tell us about it. Yes.
So I actually live in southeastern Massachusetts, but I work for the Epilepsy Foundation of New England. And we just recently acquired Vermont as one of our service areas.
Oh, wow.
So we are excited to learn what Vermont has to offer and how we can partner and help our community.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, great. What part of Mass?
I live in Southeast. I'm about 15 minutes away from Providence, Rhode Island.
Okay, excellent. Anyone else? That's your hand. How you doing? Was it Wendy?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I like Rebecca, also work for the Epilepsy Foundation New England. We are community resource specialists. We obviously just acquired Vermont, as well as the other states that we serve. So we now serve 5. So we're excited to see what Vermont has. I live in Western Massachusetts. I'm about 15 minutes from Springfield. So we have a Springfield too. We're just really excited to be a part of this. So thank you guys for having us.
Yeah. I'm from the Berkshires, by the way.
Oh, awesome. So where in the Berkshires?
I was in Pittsfield, Mass.
Nice. At one time I lived in Pittsfield. So you're familiar with the Angelina subs.
Oh, very much so. that's like having, what's the sub here? Gills. Yep, just like Gills. Yep.
Yes, those are very delicious.
Yes. So. Anyone else? Welcome, by the way.
Thank you.
We have Stephanie Mark raised her hand.
Who's that?
Stephanie, up in the left-hand corner of your screen.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Steph.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Burke. I work with the Rutland Regional Planning Commission. I'm one of the planners here, and one of the program areas that I work with is emergency management. So this is a group that I've been intending to try to connect with for some time. So today was the day.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Who's next? Who else we have? Anyone else? Yes. Hi, was it Harold? You're muted, I guess. There you go.
There you go. Sorry about that. Yeah. Hi, Harold Pinkham, the new director of development for the Mentor Connector, and just came on board, and looking forward to being a part of the meeting and getting be a part of the community.
Well, welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else that's out there? Okay. Not being there. Is the mayor out there? Via phone, picture? Yes, no?
I haven't seen him yet, Mark.
You haven't seen him yet?
No, and I was unable to confirm this month if he was going to be here. I was going to ask him the other day, and I didn't get a chance to.
Well, we'll go down to the chief. How's that? Chief, welcome. Nice to see you again, sir. You're muted too.
There we go. Thanks, Mark. Yes, good to see you. Good to see everyone. Just want to go through a few things on the legislative agenda at the state. The Chiefs Association sort of tracks what's affecting sort of law enforcement, and I'll share some of that, some of the proposed legislation that's up in Montpelier right now. The first is an act relating to secondary enforcement of minor traffic offenses. And the proposed legislation is that, so a secondary offense is an offense that you really can't enforce unless there's a primary offense that you've stopped a vehicle for. Some of this stuff, that we see doesn't make a whole lot of sense to us, but the proposal is that the following offenses may be enforced only if a law enforcement officer has detained the operator of a motor vehicle for another suspected traffic violation. And one of these things that really sticks out as a proposed secondary offense is a vehicle with no headlights. So with this proposal, if a police officer observes a car at night with no headlights, we couldn't pull it over unless we see some other offense being committed. So again, that to me doesn't make it, from a public safety standpoint, doesn't make a lot of sense. Another thing that sort of sticks out to me is if we observe, again, with this proposed legislation, if a police officer observes a vehicle or an operator of a vehicle possessing or consuming alcohol or cannabis, we can't pull it over unless we observe some other offense, a primary offense. So again, and another thing too, and again, this was unique when I came here from Vermont. I loved it, absolutely loved it. It was it's prohibited to smoke tobacco with a minor in a motor vehicle with a child present. I thought that was great. We didn't have that in New York. I thought that was absolutely great. And the proposal here is to make that a secondary offense. So anyway, I loved it. It's you see a kid in the back seat in a car seat, and with a car full of smoke. It's kind of it's disturbing almost. But anyway, that's another one. So that's something that's being proposed. Listing, as I said, about 12 different offenses. The proposals to make those secondary offenses where we couldn't pull over a car for those things. Some of them are fairly minor. Having an obstructed number on your license plate. But again, some of these, I'm surprised they're being considered as a secondary offenses. So that was one. Another thing that I think I like where it's going is to prohibit. It addresses cars with kind of modified exhaust systems, and you may have seen, you may have heard cars where when they let off the gas, it backfires a lot, right? Well, I can tell you, when we started to see a lot of these cars, we were getting calls for shots fired. And I remember a couple of years ago, we had a call on Strong's Ave for exactly that, shots fired. We dedicated significant resources to that investigation, tracking down camera systems in the area. And after a couple of days, what we found was that this was a car. It wasn't shots being fired. But it was a car with that sort of exhaust. So I like that. That's being proposed. We'll see where that goes. And opposition to that is these hobbyists that for what and argue that it makes for a more efficient emission system and everything else. But anyway, from a public safety standpoint, I like it. Another proposal right now is relates to sealing of criminal history records, some changes to that. Another is to, as you may know, when individuals are charged with certain offenses, those matters can be referred, sort of diverted really to community justice centers. And this H470 is proposes to permit referral of additional cases really to the criminal justice centers. Another thing which is significant, I think, is S276, which proposes to require Vermonters 75 years of age or older to appear in person and pass both a vision test and a road test in order to renew an operator's license. Not sure where that'll go. And the last thing, which is being looked at closely, is the eliminating a doctrine called qualified immunity for police officers. Now, qualified immunity applies to governmental employees, but this legislation is specifically looking to carve out qualified immunity for police officers and not any other governmental officials. And so that's it's happened in 2 other states. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about what qualified immunity is. It doesn't preclude agencies from disciplining. It doesn't preclude officers from being arrested. It doesn't preclude officers from being sued. But it's, I think it's somewhat of a knee-jerk reaction to some events going on throughout the country. And I think, I think the use of force response, I saw that as a knee-jerk reaction. If you remember when George Floyd was murdered, I think the president had an executive order prohibiting chokeholds, except when deadly force is authorized. I think was reasonable. Vermont, though, prohibited chokeholds even when deadly force was authorized. So I think that was a knee-jerk reaction. There was some meaningful discourse around that issue following that the prohibition of chokeholds when deadly force is authorized. No one was arguing that chokeholds shouldn't be used unless deadly force is authorized. But Vermont prohibited chokeholds even when deadly force is authorized. So if you're in a deadly force situation and you had the possibility of choking someone when deadly force is authorized and ultimately not killing that person, well, you couldn't. You're forced then to use some other means of deadly force when it was authorized. Again, didn't make sense. I think it was a knee-jerk reaction, but ultimately a year later that did change. And I think this is another one of those sort of knee-jerk reactions to different things. And it comes at a time when, it's difficult for us to recruit, to retain individuals. And so I just hope there is some some meaningful conversation and some, and the hope is that that individuals take the opportunity to educate themselves on what qualified immunity really is. So that's what's sort of going on up here with respect to law enforcement. So thanks, everyone. Good to see everyone.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Hey, Chief, I got a question before you go. I was concerned when you're talking about you couldn't stop someone with a headlight. What happens, you got somebody, 12 o'clock at night driving with no headlights?
Well, again, you're right. And it's in the proposed legislation that's considered a secondary offense. And we couldn't pull that car over to enforce that unless there's some other primary offense that's observed. So, again, usually when you see someone, I would say fairly regularly, if you see a car at night, late at night with no headlights, there's some level of impairment. But again, without the ability to pull that car over before something more serious happens, there's some more serious offense. I mean, we could do it with this proposed legislation. I don't think it'll pass the way it is, the way it's written. I hope so, and I hope not. But not sure where this thought process, what the thought process is behind this sort of thing. Again, if we observe someone who's consuming alcohol or cannabis in a car, we can't pull it over. With this proposed legislation. So again, not sure where that's what the rationale is behind that, to tell you the truth, but that's what's being proposed.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Sure.
I have a question for him.
Yeah, go ahead, Elise.
I don't understand the qualified immunity. If it doesn't preclude discipline, arrest, and lawsuit, what exactly does, if they eliminate qualified immunity, what does that actually mean for an officer?
So it's a fairly nuanced doctrine, really. But qualified immunity provides protection to officers, except when they violate someone's rights, knowingly sort of violates. Again, I'm not a legal expert, but the distinction is knowingly violating a well-established right versus kind of unknowingly sort of violating a well-established right. I don't know if that's it might be an oversimplification, but that's sort of the distinction. So in cases where an officer knowingly violates someone's civil rights, a well-established right, then there wouldn't be protection. But But again, unknowingly sort of violating someone's right, then there would be protection. And but again, it doesn't preclude discipline. It doesn't necessarily preclude arrest, but it would include some personal liability for committing that act. That's the protection that qualified immunity gives you.
Anybody, any other questions for the chief? Okay. Greg. My
Oh.
friend. Yes, sir.
I don't have any major remarks today, so I'm going to pass on my time. The Vision Center is doing well, although it's very lonely up here. We need some partners to come back and take up some cubicle space. But other than that, I'm going to leave my time open for the 2 presentations that are coming up, because I want to give them as much time as possible. So we can move past me, Mark, and move on to the first presentation if you'd like.
Yes. Good morning, Nancy. Where are you?
Good morning, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. See? There you go. Thank you, Nance. Nance, there's no saying. You got the floor.
Okay, and Greg, you will let me share my screen.
I just made you co-host. You're good to go.
Beautiful. Okay, so away we go. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm here to introduce 211 and a little bit about Help Me Grow, which is co-located in the 211 Contact Center. Our slogan, our latest slogan is From Hello to Help, 211 is here. And that is absolutely the case. We are here 24/7, 365. And we are a 3-digit telephone number assigned by the FCC, providing access to vital community resources. Let me see if I can pull this up to full slideshow quality here. Okay. Disregard my transcript here. We are here to connect you with the right information at the right time. Our contact specialists, I liken to a cross between a dispatcher and a caseworker. Our database is full of hundreds of community resources, everything from emergency food and shelter, disability services, counseling, senior services, healthcare, childcare, drug and alcohol programs, legal assistance, transportation agencies, and so on. We are not an emergency number. If the building is burning, then you call 911. If you've been displaced because of the burning building and you're looking for resources in the community to help you rebuild your life, 211 is the resource. Directory assistance 411 will just give you a phone number. We, however, have the contact center specialists who are trained in a particular process to help people discern what happens next. We are part of what they call the N11 system, which developed after World War II. So 311 would operate in major cities like New York and Chicago, operating very similarly to what 211 does. Directory assistance, we know. Traffic and travel information 511 in Vermont is only web-based now. It used to be a number you could dial.
And
Those of
Nancy,
you, yes.
are you sharing a screen right now? Because all we see is you and
Yeah.
we don't
Oh.
have the slides up.
Okay, well, let's see. I'm glad you told me that. Let me get out of this full-size screen that only I can see. Oops. Okay, yeah. Let's do that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, my
Yeah.
apologies. I was so busy with the other part, making sure I pulled it up. All right. So let's go back to that and minimize your friendly faces. This is the national assignment of numbers, again, in the wake of World War II. Telephone service and repair is 611. Telephone relay for folks who are deaf or hard of hearing. That's the way that they can see a conversation taking place. The big dig number, 811, of course, we all know about 911. 211 covers, as you can see, almost 96% of the country.
Whoops.
Give you a fuller screen here. That's what we want. Okay. So almost 96% of the country, we're all over Canada as well. And there is an association of information and referral systems to which we belong. And there are very strict standards with which we comply with other 211s. People looking for help often don't know where to begin, and we hope to spare a lot of agita, heartache, for people who are trying to get going. Plus, there's person-to-person assistance and a problem-solving process. What's in our database? Well, thousands of programs, over 1,000 agencies, and 10,000 services within about 3,000 programs. General categories, basic needs, the one that people know us best for. 31% of the contacts in Vermont last year were related to basic needs. But consumer services, criminal justice and legal services, education, environment, public health, public safety, of course, during COVID have been huge. Healthcare, income support and employment, individual and family life, mental health and substance abuse services, and in general, organizational and community services. Federal, state, and local entities, community action agencies, nonprofits of all sorts, churches, service organizations, and civic groups that provide services to the public, and out-of-state entities as well, as long as they provide services to our region. One of the beauties of the search function is that you can eliminate organizations that don't apply to you. But last year, as you can see, well over 42,000 calls and texts during 2021. We have the text coverage from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And all you have to do is text your phone number, rather text 898-211 from your phone number, and then you will get back someone in the contact center to communicate with you. As I said, over 1,000 agencies, over 10,000 services, 3,000 programs. We are in a partnership with the Agency of Human Services. They provide roughly 80% of the budget to operate 211 in Vermont. We have about 10% that comes from grants, and we have another 10% through United Way campaigns around the state. We keep a really great database of information, call volume, types, and locations. We share data. We work closely with Vermont Emergency Management. And our online searchable database is there for you at all times. Over 39,000 searches in Vermont last year. Top referred services statewide. We are as close as you can get to a barometer of community needs in real time. Housing and shelter continue to be the top 10, at the top of the top 10. Tax organizations and services are very big in other parts of the states where 211 takes the appointments directly. In Rutland County, Brock handles those directly, but in other parts of the state, 211 makes the appointments with people. Public assistance programs, of course, we're talking things like general relief, food stamps, 3 Squares Vermont, and Medicaid. People wanting to know about that. Information services means specialized information and referral. Like, for example, somebody who wanted to learn about the epilepsy services in Vermont, since we have representatives from Epilepsy Foundation of New England here, that would be the kind of thing that we would direct people toward. Health supportive services in the recent past has meant a lot about vaccines, but also includes assistance with medical bills, COVID questions, of course, under the screening and diagnostics, wanting to learn more about agencies on aging, community action agencies like BROC, and trying to also find out public officials' contact information. And of course, food and utilities have been big all the time. That's statewide. As you can see, similar top 10 during the last year in Vermont, with the notable exception of the tax information, although that would come under referrals to community groups such as BROC. Over 2,200 contacts, almost 2,300, almost 2,600 referrals, 660 web searches originating from people who identified themselves as Rutland County residents last year. The process, like somebody in a dispatch role, establishing rapport, gathering information, problem solving, and helping the caller establish next steps. So again, it's not just here's a number, goodbye. Help people strategize, match resources with need, identify potential barriers so that you're not giving people information that they can't use because they can't get there or don't have the language skills or whatever it might be in order to follow through on what you're doing. And there is follow-up and ongoing support for people who might need them. And we give options. We don't tell people to go to one place if there are options within a community. For example, we have BNA and hospice, and we also have Beata, and they are both nonprofits now. So we would refer people to both organizations and let them make a choice for themselves. This is the home page of our website. I'm going to show you how to do a search very quickly. What you're going to want to see is that lovely rectangle, that navy rectangle, or in the drop-down menu. As we go to the next slide, to give you a close-up of that. Find resources. Here's the database. Or over here, this lovely navy rectangle, the community resource directory. I like to call this the greatest hits page because the greatest number of hits are on these categories, and these icons will take you directly there. But you're also going to want to look at your zip code first. Enter your zip code. The drop-down menu will show the names of the communities. Like in the case of Rutland, is it Rutland City, Rutland Town, Mendon, all sharing the same zip code. So you would want to include that information. Not that the services would change radically, but it's how the system works. There's a keyword search for a given topic. If you were to click on food, there would be this long list, or children. It's, you know, some typical topics that you would have a long list of related concerns. Or you want to find out if a particular agency or program is offering something. Like, okay, use the example of BROC because it gets so many referrals. I want to find out everything I can about BROC. Just go directly to that. You can do a search that way. You can search for the top 25 most sought services of the month. You can look at things alphabetically, etc. But when in doubt, call or text so that you're dealing with somebody who knows the database inside and out. We are very important in times of crisis. We expand the capacity of emergency operations centers. We're there for the non-emergency relief, all the things that happen in the wake of something. We free up 911 and other emergency services. We can record and track damages in a natural disaster. We're there for rumor and information control. We're there, frankly, to hold the hands of somebody who you don't want tying up the police line, for example. And we field questions. We're there. So any organization that has something going on, make us part of your plan if we're not already. The CARE register. This is the Citizens Assistance Registry in Emergencies. If you needed help in an emergency or evacuation situation, you're isolated, you've got a service animal, you have a visual impairment, you use oxygen, and you need a backup supply, or you have special medical equipment that you cannot be without electricity for an extended period of time. These details would be kept in the registry, housed by 211, but available to any emergency management personnel. That list is generated immediately when an authorized person contacts us to get that, and we're in partnership with Vermont Emergency Management and 911, and available, of course, for all municipal law enforcement and other emergency personnel. So that information is kept private for the citizen until it's needed. There are many, many more reasons to contact 211. Everything from asbestos information to there's a dead animal on the road, who do I call to pick it up? To I want to get my tap water tested, concerned about a dementia evaluation for a loved one, et cetera, et cetera. Hunting licenses, boating safety. I had a kid come up to me at Chittenden Day in August. He was all excited to know that he could learn what he needed to get his boating permit, or is it a license, whichever. But he was super excited to learn that he could go to 211 and find out how to do that. And since we're about to talk with Avaloy, I thought it would be appropriate to mention our connection to human trafficking. We are the number to call if you suspect human trafficking and would like to help a potential victim. Of course, you call 911 if you see somebody in immediate danger. And we serve all genders and ages. We serve labor trafficking victims, sex trafficking victims, citizens, foreign nationals, and undocumented persons. And through United Way Worldwide, we have interpreters of over 200 languages that are available at all times. It might take 15 or 20 minutes if it's a more obscure language, but for the languages likely to be necessary in our community, those would be easy to find. Help Me Grow Vermont is the last thing I want to introduce to you. Help Me Grow Vermont is specific to parents, caregivers, etc., of children prenatal through age 8. These are child development specialists. We have 3 on staff. They are available from 8 to 6, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And they can help not only with mundane concerns like, my baby's colicky, how do I get the baby to quiet down, to more serious questions about developmental delays or behavioral issues that are really serious. They also work with the family sometimes as long as a year or a year and a half to make sure that the children get the early interventions they need. So if they need to see specialists, they'll make sure that they don't get lost in the system. And they have access to everything in the 211 database, so they can do all the other referrals that may apply if they find out that there's food insecurity or domestic violence or some of these other concerns that the household has. Even if they're presenting one question at first, they will work with all of those issues to help people move forward as a family. And you just have to text HMGVT to the same number or dial 211 and get extension 6. So to do that, text your zip code to that number We also have a toll-free number in Vermont and a number outside of Vermont. And I only mention that because sometimes there's a national issue with the 211 number, and somebody might need to turn off their Wi-Fi in order to get through, or use one of these other numbers as a backup. But generally speaking, that is what she wrote. And I thank you very much for your time and attention. Now, does anybody have questions for me?
I wanted to clarify one thing, Nancy. And it's the cell phone number. So if you were wanting to text this service, can you share what that phone number is again?
898-211. So you would begin a regular 211 conversation by texting your zip code to that number. Your message would be your zip code.
Okay.
If you want to speak to Help Me Grow, then HMGVT would be the message to the same number, 898-211.
Sorry, when do you do that?
That would be if you wanted to speak with the Help Me Grow child development specialist.
Oh, I see.
So that would be the message rather than the zip code.
Okay, got it. Thanks. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so right away, if you start the conversation by texting your zip code, they're pulling up the zip code in the contact center, and they're automatically eliminating services that don't apply, because who cares about a great program serving the Northeast Kingdom if it doesn't serve Rutland County too?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, it seems that 211 seems like a really great service. So thanks so much for being part of it.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, no, it's an amazing thing. It actually started in Vermont, in Windham County, about 1970, and then Chittenden County got on board, but it was under Governor Douglas that the Public Service Bureau got involved, and people from all over the state got involved to launch it. So next week will be our 17th anniversary. Well, actually, when I say next week, tomorrow, it's already the 10th. Yes, tomorrow is 211 Day. So it will be our 17th year as a statewide 211 tomorrow.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Yeah, I lived in New York City for years, and there's a number you can like call there, and there are city services that you can only access that way. Having like programs like this is incredibly valuable. It's so good.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lionel.
Nice job, Nance.
Oh, thank you. Let me see if I can get out of this share here.
Okay. And next we're going on to the human trafficking.
Hey, Beloy, I made you co-host, so we have slides you can share as well.
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. I actually don't have slides to share. Nancy has made me look bad, so I wish I'd have gone first. Slides slow me down, and many who know me know that brevity is not my strong suit in the first place. So I'm going to do my best to talk about trafficking. I'm Ava Loy Lanning with News Story Center, and for those of you who aren't familiar with our work, News Story Center is the domestic and violence service provider for Rutland County. We serve victims and survivors of domestic and sexual violence and human trafficking throughout Rutland County. We've been in Rutland for over 40 years, and we provide emergency shelter services, advocacy services. We have a systems and court advocate that is supporting survivors in the court system every week. We're a vision partner, and so Bianca, who is our systems advocate, is in the Vision Center a couple of days a week. And we have an economic empowerment project, and many other projects going on here at News Story Center, and we are so grateful to be a part of this community, and for the support we get from the community, and we are very privileged to get to support those in our community that need us. And So Greg asked me today to talk about human trafficking, which is an area, it was my entire professional career spent doing human trafficking work prior to coming to Vermont. And so I've been around this field for a long time. And we have recently at News Story Center taken over, we're one of 3 domestic violence programs through the state of Vermont that have taken over the remainder of a collaborative grant that was in its last year doing human trafficking work. And so we agreed to do that, happily so. It's work that we've been doing all along. We support survivors of trafficking and have since always. We have supported survivors of human trafficking. And so to have this grant really gives us another pot of funds to pull from to be able to support victims in the best way that we can. And the collaborative part of the grant is working with law enforcement, state's attorneys, all work that we already do. And so we're very happy to take over that role and provide those services. So human trafficking, let me start just by saying that human trafficking is a legal designation. It's a legal term. In 2000, the U.S., the House and Senate passed the Trafficking Victims Protection Act and gave it the legal definition that it has right now. And I'm not going to read the legal definition. Simply put, for adults, it is any type of, it's exploitation that benefits someone financially. So a trafficking can be for sex or labor, and it is exploitation that happens through force, fraud, or coercion. So we most often, if you have seen or heard about human trafficking in the media, through movies, it often involves women and girls in the sex trade, in the commercial sex trade, doing sex work. And people often think of prostitution as trafficking. And so the legal definition is very nuanced, but it's also very clear. There has to be an element of force, fraud, or coercion involved. And that is true with labor trafficking as well. And labor trafficking is everything else that's not prostitution. So it could be work in a strip club. It could be work in a nail parlor. It could be work in a factory setting. It could be work as a nanny. It could be work as a carnival. I'm pulling all examples from my own experience in working with survivors. So all of these things that I'm saying are real and have happened. And there are survivors of human trafficking that have been exploited in the hotel motel industry, in so many aspects of our society, that the question that I get most often is that really happening here? And the answer is yes, it's really happening here. It's happening in Rutland County. It's happening all over Vermont. It's happening in Maine and New Hampshire and Texas and Ohio and in China and Russia and Belarus and Mexico and all over the world. And so it is not something unique to any one place. It's not something that we can point at any one area and say, oh, that's where the traffickers are from, or that's where human trafficking is occurring. It is happening everywhere. And there was a case that was fairly high profile recently in Rutland that I believe will probably rise to the level of human trafficking in some instances. And I'm not going to talk about any specifics really of that case. But what I will say about the vulnerability of people who are trafficked are that trafficking is traffickers prey on those that are vulnerable.
They don't know what's happening. The victims don't know what's happening.
Correct. If we think about If we think about what makes someone vulnerable to trafficking, we can talk about any aspect of our society, whether it is someone who is foreign born and doesn't have legal immigration status in the United States. That makes them vulnerable to exploitation. If it is someone who is who is dealing with issues of addiction. Addiction makes people vulnerable. Poverty makes people vulnerable. Being a child makes you vulnerable. There are so many things that could make someone vulnerable to a trafficker, and traffickers are very adept at exploiting those vulnerabilities. So I talked about adults, and I talked about the legal definition and the legal distinction for adults who are trafficked. Children, the legal distinction and definition for children who are trafficked into labor trafficking looks almost identical to that of adults. For children that are trafficked for sex, the definition is a lot clearer cut. So anyone under the age, it depends on if we're looking at the state statute or the federal statute. I'm going to say the age 18. But if a child, a minor who is trading sex for something of value is trafficked. I could serve them under the trafficking grant. I could pull from that pot of funds. Prosecutors could go after the person who is benefiting from that relationship. And the child that's involved in that situation doesn't have to see themselves as a victim of trafficking. It is so if they're trading sex for a place to sleep, if they're trading sex for a meal, if they're trading sex for drugs, if they're trading sex, whatever it is, if they are a minor, they're trading sex for something of value under the legal statutes and the legal definition, then they are victims of trafficking. That is not true for adults. The force, fraud, or coercion has to be present in those cases for it to be true for adults. So let me talk a little bit about, when I often, when I say we work with survivors of human trafficking, we work with victims of crime at News Story Center. Human trafficking is a crime. And one of the ways that, one of the coercive ways that a trafficker can keep a victim in a trafficking situation is often the victim is doing something illegal for that trafficker. They may be selling drugs, they may be using drugs, they may be working in the sex trade, doing commercial sex work. They may be, they could be dealing in stolen goods. They could be all kinds of things. So the trafficker, their first way of keeping them in this exploitative situation is to say to them, you are doing X, Y, or Z, and you're going to be arrested. They're going to find you at fault and they're going to arrest you. You're going to lose your kids. You're going to go to jail. Everybody's going to know. So that's one of the ways that a trafficker would keep a victim in a trafficking situation. And the message that I would want anyone to hear that's being exploited by their trafficker, you aren't doing anything wrong, right? It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you are working in the sex industry, if you are dealing drugs, if you are whatever it is, you are not doing anything wrong. If you are being forced to do that work and you are afraid to leave it, you're afraid for your safety, you're afraid for the safety of your family, and your trafficker is using that fear against you, you aren't doing anything wrong. Reach out, ask for help. So it is, the traffickers are very clever. They're also incredibly dangerous. And that doesn't matter if it is a trafficker that has 10 victims that they're exploiting or if they have one victim that they're exploiting. Traffickers are very, very dangerous because they are benefiting from the work of the person that they are trafficking. They're benefiting financially. They're benefiting because they're getting free childcare for their children. They're benefiting because they they are dependent on this. They are dependent on this, and they're going to fight to keep it. They're going to fight to keep it, and they're going to lie, and they're going to exploit, and they're going to do all of those kinds of things to protect themselves and to keep their victim victimized. This is the same work that we deal with in domestic violence or sexual violence, right? It is work that we do every day. We talk to people every day who have been bound by their abuser. A trafficker at their very core is an abuser, maybe an abuser times 10, but they're an abuser. And at their very core, an abuser doesn't care. They believe in their superiority over another person, whether that person is their intimate partner or whether that person is an employee of theirs or someone that they're trafficking. They believe in that they're perfectly fine to exploit this person that is lesser than they. I have worked with so many survivors of both trafficking, domestic violence, sexual violence, who didn't see what was happening to them as they believed they got themselves into that situation. I got myself into this situation. I deserve what I get because I made a dumb choice. I made a poor choice. I've heard it all. I've heard all the language around that. There is no choice that you made. You didn't choose to be exploited in this way. You couldn't have chosen to be exploited in this way. I want everyone to hear that message. You didn't choose this, but you can choose to leave because there are people out there that can support you. Our law enforcement is there to support you. News Story is here. We're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to support you. We are here to stand with you, to walk with you through the entire process. Whatever that process is for you, all of our work is 100% confidential. So if you come to us and you say, these things have been happening to me, but I don't want to do anything about it. I just want to be out of it. I want to be safe. I want to move on with my life. Then if that's what you want, that's what we want for you. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that that happens. If you come to us and say, these things happened to me and I want my husband, trafficker, abuser, rapist, I want them held accountable for what they've done to me, then we will help you make that report to law enforcement. We trust our local law enforcement. We have had good relationships with our local law enforcement. And when you're ready to make that report, we're ready to help you make it. If you don't ever want to make that report, it's totally fine with us. We will move on. There's no expectation on our part that anyone take any path that they're not ready to take. And so that is something. While I keep intertwining domestic violence, sexual violence, and human trafficking, there are so many similarities in the level of exploitation, coercion, mental and psychological bondage that goes along with any of these things: sexual violence, domestic violence, human trafficking. The psychological bondage is real. I say to people often, the bruises and physical scars from abuse and exploitation heal a lot faster than the psychological damage caused by an abuser. So we're here for the long haul, and we're here to help as long as it takes for you to move on successfully with your life in a direction that you want to move. Some things that I will say about trafficking. Trafficking is not, as I said earlier, if we watch the movies, we think it's women and girls and sex. It is not all women and girls and sex. There are many men and boys that are trafficked around the US and around the world. The statistics of cases that rise to the level of the legal definition of human trafficking, which again, we go back to that human trafficking is a legally designated term, and for something to rise to the level of those cases, most of the cases in the United States, over half, actually about 70% of the cases in the United States are for labor and not sex. But remember that labor is everything else that's not prostitution, right? And so there's sexual exploitation that is involved in many areas of labor trafficking. Years ago, I worked with a woman who was in a trafficking situation. She was being held captive in a home as a nanny, caring for several children. She was being sexually exploited by the male in the house. But the labor piece, the trafficking piece of what was happening to her, was in regard to being the nanny for the children. She was unable to leave through force, fraud, and coercion. There were threats made to her family and her home country, threats made to her about her family. Also, the sexual exploitation that was happening by the man of the household, he was using that as a way to keep her from reaching out for help by saying, because of her culture, because of the stigma that attached in her having sex with someone, even though it was forced sex with someone that was not her husband, would have brought shame on her family, and the stigma around that. He threatened, to tell her family, to report those sexual encounters to her family, and that they would never believe that it was forced sex. So all of those things were keeping her captive. They were keeping her captive in that home. The fear of leaving, the fear of having nowhere to go, who would believe her, where would she go, where would she stay, what kind of help would be there for her. All of that kept her there and kept her fearful. Traffickers often make many promises to their victims. Nobody just walks willingly into an exploitative situation. Nobody. There are promises made, whether those promises are for, I will pay you X amount of dollars and you'll be able to support your family in your home country, or you will be able to keep your earnings that you make doing sex work. Those earnings will be yours. I'm here for your protection. I love you. We're doing this for our own betterment. We're all going to be better for whatever this thing is. I will supply your drugs at the same time that I'm going to help you get off of them, and I'm going to help you get healthy, and I'm going to help you get better, and you're going to live this great and wonderful life because I'm promising this to you. And promises. And so, as with many domestic violence situations, nobody starts off in an abusive relationship. The relationship would end after the first date if it was abusive, right? On the first date. But you fall in love, you become attached, you believe in a future, you have hope, you have dreams, you have expectations, all of these things. That doesn't go away in trafficking situations either. It doesn't go away immediately. You hold on to that hope. You hold on to that belief that it will actually get better, that it will be what was promised. Traffickers use those promises as ways to keep people in this psychological bondage. So we are really talking about people here that use their charm, they use all of their powers of persuasion to convince someone to trust them, to believe them that this is going to be a good situation. And And then they flip the switch. They flip the switch. They know that they've got your trust, your love. Perhaps they've had a child together. Perhaps, I mean, there are so many aspects of this, but this belief that a future is going to be better, and using that belief to keep someone in a trafficking situation is one of the means of the force, fraud, or coercion. Making a promise that they never had any intention of fulfilling, there's the fraud, right? So whether that promise is you're going to work for me for a nanny for 6 months and you're going to make $2,000 a month and you're going to be able to move on, and they never had any intention of doing that, or the promise is we're going to get married, but this thing has to happen first, and you're going to be able to keep your earnings, and you never see your earnings. Oh, I've got to take your earnings this month to buy your clothes. I've got to take your earnings this month to get your hair and your nails done. I've got to take your earnings this month because that's your part of the rent. And then all of a sudden, not only are you not getting to keep your earnings, you're giving your earnings to your trafficker, but your trafficker's telling you you owe them more money. Like you haven't earned enough to pay for your rent. So now you're in debt to them. So now you can't leave until your debt is paid off. It is the most egregious form of exploitation, and I have seen I've seen it from every aspect. There's no one face of a trafficking victim, and there's no one face of a trafficker. I've worked with diplomats who were traffickers. I have worked with people wearing, $10,000 suits that were traffickers, driving really incredible cars, living in really nice houses in really nice neighborhoods, sending their kids to really nice schools. I have worked with traffickers who own small restaurants, small mom and pop restaurants that are, they look like every other member of their community. So there is no one face of human trafficking. There's also no one face of the help that's available to people who have been trafficked. So I just want to, Greg is telling me I have 10 minutes to go, and there are, people have lots and lots of questions around the issue of human trafficking. And so I want to be able to answer as many of those as I can. I want, before I stop and before I answer your questions, I want to make sure that all of you have our crisis hotline number, which is 802-775-3232. That number is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There is an advocate available to talk to you. If you have time, if you are away from your trafficker and you have the safety, if you see someone who thinks it's in a situation where they're being exploited or they're being abused by their partner, there are moments of time, brief moments of time, that maybe you could slip them that number. Or perhaps if you need that number, you could call that number. You can call that number over and over and over again to help you. We are there. Thank you, Bianca. We are there to help whenever you need us, in whatever way you need our help. If you just need to talk to us, if you need to come into our office and sit down and take a breath and spend some time just sitting here in silence, then we're happy to sit with you in silence. Whatever you need, we're here for you. And I'm going to stop now, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
By the way, very informative, but I just have one thing to say. You can probably agree or disagree. To me, all these, you can call them traffickers, whatever, they're just low class or high class pimps, period. That's how I look at it.
Well, I don't disagree with you, but I wouldn't call them all pimps, because that sort of throws the idea of trafficking back into this idea that it's all sex. Right. And it is not all sex.
I know,
right?
Because no matter how you look, to me, you've got people who have control. It's a power over them. So, if they're taking, what they're doing is take a percentage, but you haven't paid anything back yet. And that's why I use that term, low class or high class. Then it's used the term, So.
I have other words that I use.
Oh, I
that.
have two. I have some
won't
adjectives also. Okay, thank you. Any questions for her? Go right ahead. Any questions?
I have so many questions, but the one I'll ask is, as a community, when we're out in the world, what can we do? What's the one, if you were to give us one action step as community members, what would that be?
The thing that we say all the time, we get people who call our hotline all the time and say, I think my friend, partner, relative, neighbor is in an abusive situation. The thing that we say to them when you have the opportunity is be a good listener, right? One thing I would say in human trafficking cases, also in domestic violence cases, don't intervene. Don't yourself, don't intervene, because these people are dangerous. And you could be putting the victim in more danger by intervening. Be there to listen, let them know that you are a safe space, that they can tell their story, that they can ask for help. Slip them the crisis number if you need it. If you are seeing something, there have been many trafficking cases that have come to the attention of law enforcement by observant neighbors. And I'm not talking about Rutland specific, many cases that I've been involved with. Observant neighbors who are seeing things that just aren't right. So they call their local law enforcement and they tell their local law enforcement what they're seeing. Document things. If you are seeing a steady stream of people that don't live somewhere, kind of going in and out of a place all hours of the day and night, those kinds of things, let your local law enforcement know what you're seeing and what you're hearing, because they're the ones that can actually do something about it, that can go in. But the thing that I think we all of us community members, the thing that I think we do best is be that safe space for someone, be that listening ear, be someone that cares about our neighbors, and have just a little bit of information to give them when they ask you for that information, when they ask. And so hotline numbers, calling if someone ran to your home, call 911. That is always 911 is your place to go for safety. But have the number handy to be able to give information to people, and 211. 211 is easy to dial if you're in a hurry. Let folks know that they can also text 911. If they text 911 with their location and just a little bit about what's happening, they don't even have to make a phone call and use their voice. So there is, but be that ally. Be that ally, be that safe place for people is the best advice I can give.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Did you have a question for anyone else? All right. We have announcements.
Mariah.
Right, yes. Where are you?
I see her.
There she is.
Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
It's Thursday.
Well, I have unfortunately made the decision due to some stuff coming up with my son. I'm gonna have to not do the co-sharing. I want to still participate in Project Vision and do what I can as best I can. But as far as co-chairing, I think it's too much on my plate right now with some unplanned behaviors coming from my son. I'm kind of needing to parent him right now as a priority. But I am hoping to still participate in as much as I can to get out there and give my ideas. I have tons of ideas. I think that being the co-chair is just too much for me right now.
Well, yeah.
Well, we appreciate you stepping up and wanting to do it to begin with. Is a big role to fill. So thank you, Mariah, for at least doing that, and then acknowledging that you might not be able to do all the work that's necessary, and recognizing that and stepping down before it became, a problem. So no, we appreciate it, and we hope you stay involved. And for all those out there who are interested, please let me know. Send me an email if you're interested in being a co-chair of the community or neighborhood engagement subcommittee with Jen. Formerly held before Mariah by Elise Headlam. So if you have any questions about it, send questions to Elise if Elise doesn't mind answering them for you. I should have asked her before I put her name out there. But Elise, if anybody's got questions, ask Elise Headlam about what she did and how she functioned and what's the responsibilities. Nancy, you have a question?
I just wanted to add that, and I put in the chat, for those of you who write grants to apply for things and you need backup information for your community snapshots, we are an excellent source for that. We are capable of creating custom reports for you. So never hesitate to reach out to me and ask, and we'll make sure that happens. And I'm also available to provide instruction, workshops for teams, etc. We do a live guided search of information that's relevant to your particular field. So if you're looking to create custom resources that have at your desk, please feel free to give me a call. I'll do it remotely or in person as your comfort level permits.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions or announcements before we move on? I don't see any, Mark.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have one. Sorry.
Oh, hey.
This is Darla from Building Bright Futures. I just popped in the chat. Our annual report has been released, and that's the State of Vermont's Young Children Report. And that gives you a wealth of information on children and young families, birth to 8 years old throughout Vermont. It gives you a statewide overview with a lot of great data, and it also breaks it down by region. So there's Rutland County specific information in there. Just a couple things to call out that might be of interest to folks in this meeting. It highlights the workforce crisis that we're seeing in early education. There are 1,200 fewer professionals working in regulated childcare than there were in 2020. Than there were in 2018. That's a 14% decrease. So that's one thing to call out. The second thing I'll call out is there is a 30% of children under 18 have one or more behavioral, emotional, or developmental or mental health conditions in the state of Vermont. So that's a 20% increase than what we're seeing in the past. And thirdly, 73% of historically marginalized students are not proficient in reading or math. This is compared to 41 to 43% of historically advantaged students. So that's just a touchstone of some of the information you'll find in that report. There's a lot of data in there. There's several great articles. It's a 40+ page report. I'm sure you'll all want to read it cover to cover, or you can just go to the Rutland section and see what's happening in our county. It is a snapshot in time. So like anything else, the moment we print it, it's slightly out of date, but we also do have a data center available if you're looking for more information or any information that's not highlighted in this report that you'd like to see in the future. Please contact us and we will do our best to make that happen. So I did pop those links into the chat of this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? No? Well, yes, Dave, go right ahead.
Hi there. I just wanted to pick up on what Avaloy was saying about the human trafficking. I'm with First Step Pregnancy Clinic, and it's been on the heart of our board for over a year now to kind of reach out to women that are potentially victims of human trafficking, and they kind of look like this. And it's full of essential items, kinds of things like that. It also has resources like the card for News Story and also for Turning Point and different resources like that, because we wanted to get those into the hands of gals and guys that potentially could be victims, to provide some resources and hope, and mostly to empower them to kind of take that next step for them to do what they need out of that situation. And so I have these bags available, and we put them together. And if any other organizations that do come in contact with people that you think, yeah, that could be someone that maybe could benefit from this Serenity bag, contact me and we'll get those to you. And they're absolutely free. We've had volunteers put them together. There's about $35, $40 worth of stuff in there. And so we like to just get those in the hands of people that could use them. And so I just want to let people know that we have those available.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you very much.
We have one more, Mark.
Yes, and who was it? I can't see him on my end.
Mariah?
Mariah, is it?
Hi there. I think that's me. Hi, everyone. I'm Maria Burt. I'm the regional manager for vocational rehabilitation here in Rutland and serving Bennington County as well. Some of you may know Susan Menchnick, who typically attends these meetings as our representative, and she invited me here today just to share briefly some of the exciting things that we've got going on. So we currently serve Vermonters with disability barriers to employment and helping them find or maintain all levels of employment, including, training opportunities, things of that nature, to remove any barriers they might be facing. And so one of the things that we've got going on right now is we are going through a little bit of a rebranding process. So you may start to hear our new name out in the community. Division of Vocational Rehabilitation is quite clunky and not always indicative of what we do. It can be a little bit misleading to some of the customers we might be trying to reach. And so our new name, excited to announce, will be Higher Ability. And I'll drop some info in the chat for you all to see that, as well as my contact info. If you have any further questions, would be happy to come back and do a presentation for you all if you'd like in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, Greg, has been interesting informational stuff today.
Very informative. Thank you, Avaloy, and thank you, Nancy.
Yes. Yes. And I was talking, about the trafficking, I still like my version.
Well, yours expresses the underlying feeling, certainly, but Avaloy makes very important points. Slug would be a good word too, but it's not technical.
Yeah. Technical, tomatoes. Well, thank everyone. Thank you very much. How about you, Greg? Anything before uplifting?
I am good. Let's look for an uplifting story. Who's got an uplifting story or a positive story?
Yes, Ellen.
Hi. Yes, I am here representing Southwestern Vermont Council on Aging, but in my free time, I'm the executive director of Bridge to Rutland, which brings asylum seekers to Rutland. We have 2 families here. And my uplifting story is that the other night I got a phone call from our single gentleman who said, and this was in Spanish, so I had to have him repeat it because I wasn't sure I heard right. He said, I just found $200 outside of the dollar store. What do I do? And I said, really? You found $200? And he said, yes. And I said, well, If there's nobody around it, congratulations. And he said, no, this is not my money. And I said, but if you take it in the store's just going to keep it. He said, there has to be another way. And I said, well, I can call the store and leave them my first name and my cell number. And if somebody comes in, they can call me and tell me how much was lost. And he said, okay, that's better. And I was just so impressed with someone who is living totally on donations that people give, that he did not want to take that money. It just really impressed me. So I thought I'd share that. And just so y'all know, our families are doing quite well. Asylum is a really hard process. If you ever want to know anything about it, I'd be glad to do a presentation. But anyway, that was my joy for the week. Thank you.
You know, that's really good. It's true.
Very good.
Yep. Anyone else? None?
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, Mark.
Guess what? We will see you later. And thank everybody. Really good information. Nancy, as usual, you know, this is the second time I've heard your spiel, so it's great. You know,
there's so much to try to present briefly. Yeah. It's kind of a whirlwind tour, but.
Yeah. Well, everybody have a great week, you know, and keep on smiling. Doesn't cost you a dime. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.